So the US death toll has topped 50,000. It's gone past 50,000, which is scary, isn't it? 50,000 people in America have died, in part because of the coronavirus. Obviously, we know that people with pre-existing conditions are more likely to suffer because of it. But COVID-19 being the main thing that kind of kills people, and so sorry about that. And so yeah, it's just the US still has a lower mortality rate than most of Europe nations because of the current case counts, as the White House task force emphasized. So he's trying to spin the facts a bit here. Obviously, because the US being a bigger country, it's more likely to suffer deaths, especially because some parts are very built up. So yeah, but I reckon their numbers, if they're not testing people properly, and obviously people aren't going to the hospital, so I do wonder how accurate their death rate is. Just like in the UK, the death rate isn't at all accurate. The FT thinks it's around double what the government figure is, but I'll do that. That's a separate video, not for today. So the grim news comes as parts of the US open. So these governors and these people are incredibly irresponsible. Some hair salons, bowling alleys, and other businesses are opening on Friday, and in part these businesses have to open because they're not getting a lot of state help as well. They're not getting a lot of state help. So the US has by far the highest death toll and case count around the world. However, its population at 330 million, much higher than obviously countries such as Spain and Italy. Dr. Deborah Birx on the White House COVID task force has said that the country has one of the lowest mortality rates in the world. But I do wonder if their numbers are actually accurate, or if these guys are just a bunch of spin merchants. On a per capita basis, the US reported that the death rate is lower than Spain, Italy, France, Belgium, and the UK. In fairness, they did have more time than some of these countries to deal with this outbreak, and obviously I think the US has the most amount of ICU units, more than these countries, but at the same time, like, healthcare in the US is a joke, so I don't know. So we've got some analysis here from big man like Robert, head of statistics. The US is top of the grim league table for reported current deaths, but that's not the whole picture. Part of the reason is population. Many of these countries in Europe have reported more deaths per head of population than the US, and Europe as a whole has reported. So many countries in Europe have reported more deaths per head. So it's all about, per capita, that's important. So you can talk about the deaths overall. So the US having the highest deaths, but also having a population. So per 100,000 people, it's around 15. So would that be like 5? Always, it's hard to understand stats when you're not very good at maths or understanding numbers. So this video won't be one of my best. It's not a high bar, to be fair. The picture in New York is different. Obviously, New York is built kind of like London, I think, but it's more reliant on public transport. Everyone just lives on top of each other. Death rates also depend on how you count. So France's figures include care homes, whilst Belgium's also include suspected COVID cases, making theirs look a lot worse. So it's all about how it's recorded. So in the UK, we're not recording much outside of hospital deaths, but we know the ONS are trying their best. But obviously the Financial Times came out with a study where they looked at, the deaths which are, the deaths this year, which are far higher than obviously the deaths last year. And so they're saying, like, look, most likely these people died because of coronavirus, even though it's not been reported that they have it, which may not be the best kind of methodology, but I think it's better than the current set. So if you look here per capita, it's it's fairly low compared to Italy suffered badly. Spain, France, but France do record all the details. We don't know about how the US records it. The UK, so our rate should, I think, realistically be higher than France's. I would be among the highest in the if the FT's number is right, around 40,000, would be the highest in Europe. So Belgium, so it's quite low, but obviously the Belgian population is quite small, and so that's why this number is quite inflated, I think, here. Germany's very low, China, that number I call lies on. That's some fake news right there. I think Iran would be the same. Also the Netherlands, because they're not testing people, I think, as well. So I think that number's probably false. So it's important to note that mild cases of COVID-19 remain unreported. So the death rate from these confirmed cases is not the same as the disease's overall death rate. So it's all about, to figure out, I think, one of the ways you can figure out how dangerous the disease is, you look at how many people have caught it and how many people have died from it. And obviously if people aren't reporting that they have it and that they survive, then obviously the mortality rate is lower, the death rate is lower. as a percentage of how many people catch it, because people aren't reporting on it, because mass testing isn't a thing in some of these countries. It's just, you stay at home and you wash your hands. That's the best advice they can give you. So what's the current situation? The rising death toll comes as US states are beginning to ease economic restrictions despite warnings from experts and Donald Trump. I think Dr. Fauci said that if this happens, there'll be like a second wave of coronavirus, purely because once people start going out more and intermingling with each other, then the disease is obviously going to spread. So in Georgia, which has one of the fastest reopening timetables in the country, bowling alleys, spas. Like, why would you go to a spa? It's not a good idea. Hair, nail salons, also the same. Tattoo parlors, I reckon that's going to be one where you're definitely going to catch stuff. And other personal care businesses will be allowed to resume operations. Georgia will also allow dine-in restaurants and theatres to reopen. So does that include cinemas as well? I don't know. During Thursday's task force briefing, Mr. Trump said he wasn't at all happy with the state's Republican governor, Brian Kemp. I'm waiting for Trump to send some real trigger fingers at this guy, nor were his team of experts. I want the people of Georgia to be safe, the president said, and I don't want this thing to flare up because you're deciding something that is not right in the guidelines. You're telling people to drink. You told people to drink bleach. And why can't we drink bleach and use UV lights? Mr. Kemp, after Trump's criticism, had tightened some of the sanitation and social distancing requirements for restaurants. Just close restaurants. The president is also facing backlash after he suggested injecting disinfectants. That's something. That's another video I'll do. That's hilarious. But on a real though, I reckon these numbers will be far higher because it just depends on how it's been recorded, and because of the fact that US reacted incredibly late, and that's a lot of the fault that belongs to Trump, but also the governors as well, clearly from this piece. But if Trump and the two political parties, the two wings of the same bird, the Democrats and the Republicans, actually wanted people to stay home and governors to take this more seriously, what they would do is they'd throw money at these states and say, look, we will help give you this much money and we'll help you ease the pressure on these states and on people by giving a UBI and also giving the states more funding. That will help keep people at home. If you don't do that, then people are going to go out regardless. People are going to go to work. People are going to go out and enjoy themselves regardless. But if you put pressure on the governors to say, look, we'll give you this much funding, but you have to make sure people stay at home, the governors will be like, all right, cool, and they're going to force people to stay home. And if the governors don't accept the money, then they accept the money. That's their state poorer as compared to other states. But yeah, this thing has not been handled intelligently by the US, definitely. Everyone, I think, is in panic mode because, as Georgia points out with the UK, I think it's the same with the US, is because you didn't plan for something, actually implementing anything, you're always late, you're always on the back foot, so it's never going to come out very well. So, it's sad to see that you had a lot of avoidable deaths here. But yeah, clearly the US death toll is very high, the highest potentially in the world. And we'll see at the end of it, what happens, and if there's any inquiries. The US may have inquiries, hopefully. But with that said, I'll leave it there, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.